Okay, so we can figure out how far we've traveled. We can figure out how long it took us.
Could you maybe turn off the lights so we can see it a little bit?
How far, how long we've been driving for. We can figure out how fast we're moving. And from this, we can determine our average speed. Our speedometer, our speedometer in our car tells us how fast we're going. The speedometer actually tells us how fast we're going at any specific moment in time. So whenever you're looking at that speedometer, if it says 45 miles an hour, that means you're moving at 45 miles an hour at that exact second. Not 2 seconds before that, not 2 seconds in the future, but at that exact second. We call that instantaneous speed. There's a couple of ways to represent some of these things. For instance, if we say how far we have traveled along, in physics, I like to imagine the entire world just as our XY coordinate system. So that would be our y-axis and then our x-axis running along here. And if you imagine this entire world in this frame, x, y, we could also have a z-axis. We're not going to deal with the z-axis in this class, but obviously we live in a three-dimensional world, and this is what it means. When I throw something up in the air, it's moving along the y-axis. If I throw something horizontally, it's moving along the x-axis. If something is coming at me, then that would be in the z-axis, or going away from me. That would be your z-axis. But again, we don't have to worry about z so much. So, how far? If something is moving along the x-axis, we use symbols in physics. The symbol we use for something for how far something travels, we're going to use x if it's traveling along the x-axis, and we'll use y if it's traveling along the y-axis. This is a really simplified version of what's happening in the real world. So we could be moving along the x-axis, or we could be moving along the y-axis. We're going to get into motion when we start talking about the physics of sports, where it's moving along the x and the y at the same time. Even if that's happening, we have to remember that x and y are always going to be separate from each other. So for how far, we use x and y, and we will measure that with one of our standard units of measurement. In science class, we use the meter, not the foot or inches or anything like that, but we use the metric system. So we'll use the meter. For how long something has been traveling, another word for that is time. Anybody have an idea for a symbol we could use for time?
Seconds.
Okay, good. So we're going to measure in seconds. That'll be our unit. Unit is what we are measuring in, sometimes called dimensions too. Dimensions can be measured. Units are what we call them. Sometimes they're both. The symbol that we'll use will just be a T. If you've taken physics in middle school or anything previous, you may have used S or actually probably used D for how far something went, distance, right? We don't use D in physics. We're going to get a little bit better than that. So we have X and we have Y and we have T. For how fast something is, that's going to be speed. Speed, the symbol we'll use here is going to be V. We could also use C. We could use something with a subscript. But for us right now, in this very moment, on day 2 of physics class, we're going to just call it V. And V is going to tell us how fast it moves. And the unit that we measure, normally when we get in the car, we do miles per hour. Written out, that looks like this, miles per hour. Or abbreviated to MPH, right? Well, I want to draw your attention to this per word here. And per, in math, means what, Jace?
Like every hour, like 45 miles every hour.
Okay, good. Tommy? David. Okay. Who's Tommy? Tommy and David. I'm sorry, guys. I will get there. David, in per, do you know what it would be in math class? That's all right. Nora? Math class. Per. No? That's okay. I'm just gauging where you guys are. I'm not judging you by any means. Tommy? No?
Is it for each? For every?
Not for each. It's all right.
Individual? Like how many miles you drive for 1 hour?
Okay, you guys aren't wrong when you're saying that, but dividing. Yeah. So whenever we see that per word in your math class, when that pops up, it just means it's a fraction. It just means you're dividing. So it's actually miles per hour. And yes, it is how many miles you drive in each hour. True, but miles per hour. Good. Hopefully that wasn't too terrifying. Yes, Jen.
What's the we're gonna ask what the mirror is for, like on the.
That way I can use the other mirror to just double check to make sure I don't have anything on the back of my head. No, it's when I use this table, I can put the mirror down and you can see what I'm doing up here from where you are. Yeah, miles per hour. Okay, so miles per hour. Well, in physics, we don't use miles, we use meters. And we don't use hours, we use seconds. So when we measure speed in physics class, it's going to be meters per seconds. So meters over seconds.
That's cool. But she's not quiet.
If it looks like it's falling on me, just let me know.
That's kind of cool.
It's actually like, they were the coolest things I've ever seen.